I trusted my brother to watch my daughter's 15th birthday party for 1 hour. That decision shattered our entire family. I, 38, have a 15-year-old daughter, Emma. For her birthday, I decided to throw a small gathering at our house with her best friend, Mia, and a few family members. My brother, Evan, 45, offered to help out. Emma adores Evan. He's the cool uncle who's always joking around and treating her like an adult. I've always been uneasy about how permissive he is, but I never imagined he'd cross such a massive line. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. Ever since Emma's father, Mark, and I divorced 3 years ago, Evan had stepped into that father figure role a bit too eagerly. He'd show up unannounced at our house, always with some new gadget or trendy item for Emma. "Just spoiling my favorite niece," he'd say with that characteristic grin of his. I tried to establish boundaries, but Emma would always defend him, saying I was being too strict and that Uncle Evan was just trying to help. The evening of Emma's birthday party started normally enough. I'd spent the morning decorating the house with silver and purple balloons, Emma's favorite colors. My mother, Sarah, had arrived early to help prepare the food, making Emma's favorite chocolate raspberry cake from scratch. Emma's other aunt, my sister Rachel, came with her 2 younger kids, making the gathering feel properly festive. When Evan arrived, he brought an enormous wrapped box that Emma immediately started pestering him about. "Later, squirt," he said, ruffling her hair like he always did. I noticed he was carrying a suspicious-looking gym bag too, but I was too busy coordinating everything to question it at the time. Another mistake I'd come to regret. The party began with music, snacks, and the usual family chatter. My mother was showing everyone old photos of Emma on her iPad, much to Emma's embarrassment, while Rachel's kids chased each other around the backyard. Mia arrived around 4 p.m., giving Emma a tight hug and presenting her with a handmade friendship bracelet that made Emma squeal with delight. I remember checking my phone around 5:30 p.m. and seeing an urgent work email. I run a small graphic design business from home, and one of my biggest clients was having issues with their website. I hesitated, not wanting to step away from the party, but Evan immediately volunteered to keep an eye on things. "Go handle your work stuff, sis," he said, already shepherding the teens toward the living room. "I've got this covered. We're just going to play some music and maybe watch a movie." I should have known better. I should have noticed how quickly he offered to take charge, how Emma and Mia exchanged those subtle glances. But at that moment, I was just grateful for the help. After all, my brother was 45 years old, surely he could be trusted to supervise a few teenagers for an hour? I headed to my home office, leaving the door slightly ajar so I could hear if anything got too rowdy. The first 30 minutes were fine. I could hear music playing, laughter, and the occasional shout from Rachel's kids. Then the music got louder, and the sounds became more muffled. Still, I told myself everything was fine. I was nearly done with the website fix, and then I could rejoin the party. My mother knocked on my office door around 6:45 p.m. "Sarah," she said, using my first name like she always did when she was concerned, "don't you think the music's gotten a bit loud? And I haven't seen Emma or Mia for a while." That's when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard Emma's voice or Mia's distinctive laugh. The knot in my stomach tightened as I saved my work and headed out to check on them. The living room was empty except for Rachel, who was trying to get her youngest to stop jumping on the couch. "Have you seen Emma?" I asked, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Rachel shrugged. "I think they went upstairs with Evan. Said something about playing board games in Emma's room." Board games. Something about that didn't sit right. Emma hadn't touched her board games in months, claiming they were too kiddie. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding. As I approached Emma's bedroom, I could hear music playing, not the pop songs from earlier, but something darker and heavier. Then I heard what sounded like retching. What I walked into made my stomach drop. Mia was half passed out, slumped on the bed in Emma's room, barely able to sit up and throwing up all over herself. Her usually perfectly styled brown hair was matted with sweat, and her face had taken on a sickly gray color. Emma and Evan were hovering over her, both panicked and trying to keep her awake. Empty red cups littered the floor, and in the corner, partially hidden behind Emma's desk, I spotted that gym bag Evan had brought in, now open to reveal several bottles of alcohol. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, rushing to Mia's side. The smell of alcohol and vomit was overwhelming. Emma looked petrified and didn't say much, but Evan, calmly, almost nonchalantly, admitted he had let them drink. "They're old enough to experiment a little," he said, as if we were discussing something as innocent as letting them stay up past their bedtime. When I pressed for details, he shrugged and said Mia had had about 600 milliliters of vodka. He said it like it was no big deal, casually adding, "It's fine, I was supervising them." I was horrified. Mia was barely conscious, struggling to even breathe properly, and Evan acted like this was normal. "Supervising them?" I screamed, already pulling out my phone to dial 911. "She's 15 years old and dying of alcohol poisoning. What is wrong with you?" While we waited for the ambulance, my mother came up to see what the commotion was about. The look of disappointment and shock on her face when she saw the scene mirrored exactly how I felt. Rachel quickly ushered her kids out of the house, shooting Evan a disgusted look as she left. The paramedics arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours. They immediately started checking Mia's vitals, asking questions about how much she'd drunk and when. I couldn't believe it when Evan actually tried to joke with one of the paramedics, saying something about kids these days not being able to hold their liquor. The paramedic's face hardened, and he asked Evan to step aside. As they loaded Mia into the ambulance, I had to call her parents. Julie and David Anderson, I'd known them for years through the PTA, had hosted countless sleepovers for their daughter. Now I had to tell them their only child was being rushed to the hospital because my brother thought it would be fun to get her drunk at a birthday party. Julie's voice on the phone is something I'll never forget. The way it cracked when I told her what happened, the muffled sob I heard before she managed to say they'd meet us at the hospital. I rode in the ambulance with Mia while Emma stayed home with my mother, who promised to keep an eye on her and make sure Evan didn't leave before I got back. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed what I'd feared: Mia had severe alcohol poisoning. Her blood alcohol level was dangerously high, and they had to pump her stomach. I sat in the waiting room with Julie and David, feeling smaller with each passing minute. Julie wouldn't look at me, and David kept pacing, his hands clenched into fists. "We trusted you," Julie finally said, her voice quiet but sharp. "We trusted you to keep our daughter safe." I couldn't even defend myself because she was right. I had failed. Failed to protect Mia, failed to see what was happening right under my nose, failed to recognize the danger my own brother posed to these girls. The doctors said Mia would recover, but she'd need to stay overnight for observation. Julie and David made it clear they didn't want me there, so I headed home, my mind already spinning with what I needed to do next. When I got back home, I found Evan in the kitchen, calmly making himself a sandwich as if nothing had happened. Emma was nowhere in sight. My mother said she'd gone to her room and locked the door. The sight of Evan standing there, so casual, so unaffected, made something snap inside me. "What the hell were you thinking?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. "She could have died, Evan. A 15-year-old girl could have died because you thought it would be fun to play cool uncle." He had the audacity to roll his eyes. "You're being dramatic, Sarah. Kids are going to drink anyway, better they do it with someone watching out for them." Watching out for them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You gave a teenage girl enough vodka to put her in the hospital. You're lucky I don't call the police right now." "Oh, come on," he smirked, taking a bite of his sandwich. "Like you never drank when you were their age? Remember that time Dad caught us with his whiskey?" That smirk was what did it. The casual way he was trying to minimize what he'd done, trying to make me complicit in his dangerous behavior. "Get out," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "Pack your things and get out of my house right now. And don't even think about coming near Emma until further notice." "You can't be serious," he scoffed. "Emma loves me. I'm the only one who treats her like an adult instead of babying her all the time." "She is not an adult," I shouted. "She's 15, and you're supposed to be the responsible one. Instead, you've been..." "What?" "Grooming her. Making her think it's okay for an adult to give her alcohol." That word, grooming, finally wiped the smirk off his face. He started to protest, but I cut him off. "How long has this been going on, Evan? How many times have you given her alcohol when I wasn't around?" He didn't answer, but his silence told me everything I needed to know. I pointed to the door. "Out. Now. before I changed my mind about calling the police. After he left, I went upstairs to talk to Emma. She was lying on her bed, her face tear-stained and her makeup smeared. When I knocked, she didn't answer, but the door was unlocked. "Emma, honey," I started, sitting on the edge of her bed. "We need to talk about what happened." That's when she broke down and told me everything. How Evan had first given her alcohol 6 months ago, just a tiny sip of beer because she was curious. How it had escalated to him sneaking her drinks at family gatherings, always with a wink and our little secret. How he'd promised to make her birthday party extra special by bringing alcohol for her and Mia. He said it would make me cool, she sobbed. He said Mia would think I was mature and fun. But then she kept drinking more and more, and I didn't know what to do. I held her while she cried, my heart breaking for how this man, my own brother, had manipulated her. But when I told her she wouldn't be seeing Evan for a while, she pulled away from me. "You're overreacting," she insisted. "Uncle Evan didn't mean for things to go so far. He was just trying to make my birthday special." "Emma, he put your best friend in the hospital," I tried to reason with her. "That's not okay. That's not what responsible adults do." "This is why I never tell you anything," she shouted. "You always make everything into such a big deal. You've ruined everything." She locked herself in her room after that, refusing to speak to me. I could hear her crying through the door, but every time I tried to talk to her, she just turned her music up louder. The next few weeks were hell. Mia's parents threatened to press charges against Evan, but ultimately decided not to after Mia begged them not to make things worse. They did, however, make it clear that Emma was no longer welcome in their home, and Mia wouldn't be visiting ours anymore. The girls could only talk at school, under supervision. Emma blamed me for destroying her friendship with Mia. She refused to see how Evan had manipulated her, instead painting him as this misunderstood hero who'd only wanted to make her happy. Every time I tried to explain why what he'd done was wrong, she'd shut down or start screaming about how I was ruining her life. The situation got even more complicated when Evan started sending Emma messages through social media. I only discovered this because I overheard her talking to someone on the phone about meeting him at the mall. When I confronted her, she admitted he'd been reaching out, telling her I was being unreasonable and that he missed his favorite niece. I had to take away her phone privileges after that, which only made her hate me more. She started acting out at school, her grades slipping from A's and B's to C's and D's. Her teachers called, concerned about her sudden change in behavior. One even suggested she might need counseling. The final straw came when I found out Evan had created a fake social media account pretending to be one of Emma's classmates, just so he could keep talking to her. He'd been feeding her all sorts of lies about how I was controlling and how she deserved to be treated like an adult. When I discovered this, I finally did what I should have done from the beginning. I got a lawyer. The lawyer helped me document everything, the hospital records from Mia's alcohol poisoning, screenshots of Evan's inappropriate messages to Emma, statements from the party guests about what they'd witnessed. We filed for a restraining order, which was granted after the judge reviewed the evidence. Evan didn't take it well. He started showing up at our house late at night, calling repeatedly from different numbers, even trying to contact Emma through her school friends. Each time, I documented everything and reported it to the police. Finally, after he violated the restraining order for the 3rd time, they arrested him. That was the wake-up call Emma needed. Seeing her beloved uncle in handcuffs, being led away by police officers, finally made her realize this wasn't normal behavior. She broke down completely that night, admitting that Evan had been manipulating her for months, making her feel special while slowly pushing her boundaries further and further. We started family therapy after that. It's been hard. Emma still has days where she blames me for everything, and I still struggle with guilt over not seeing the signs sooner. But we're working through it together. The therapist helps us understand how predators often groom not just their victims but entire families, making their behavior seem normal until it's too late. Mia eventually recovered fully from the alcohol poisoning, though our families aren't as close as we used to be. She and Emma still talk at school, but their friendship has changed. There's a sadness there now, a loss of innocence that can't be undone. As for Evan, he's facing charges for providing alcohol to minors and violating the restraining order. Our mother hasn't spoken to him since the birthday party, and Rachel has made it clear he's not welcome around her children either. The family is divided, with some relatives thinking I overreacted and others saying I should have called the police sooner. Emma's 16th birthday is approaching now, and we're both nervous about it. The memories of last year's disaster are still fresh, but we're trying to move forward. She's asked for a small dinner with just family, our immediate family, without Evan. It's a start. I still wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, replaying everything in my mind, wondering if I could have prevented it all. But then I remember what our therapist said: the only person responsible for Evan's actions is Evan himself. All I can do now is protect my daughter and help her heal. The hardest part isn't the legal battles or the family drama, it's watching Emma struggle to understand that someone she trusted, someone who was supposed to protect her, had actually been grooming her for his own satisfaction. That's the thing about predators like Evan, they don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the fun uncle who brings presents and makes you feel grown up. Sometimes they're so good at what they do that they fool everyone, even their own family. But we're getting stronger every day. Emma's grades are slowly improving, and she's starting to open up more in therapy. She's learning to recognize manipulation tactics and set healthy boundaries. And while our relationship isn't perfect, we're talking again, really talking, not just arguing. I know we have a long road ahead of us. Trust takes time to rebuild, and trauma leaves scars that don't heal overnight. But I'm committed to being there for Emma, to helping her navigate this difficult path to healing. Because that's what mothers do, we protect our children, even when it means making difficult decisions that they might not understand at first. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that sometimes the people who seem the most trustworthy are the ones you need to watch most carefully. Being the cool adult, the one who breaks rules and ignores boundaries, isn't cool,